last semester, I learned about educating exceptional students. So, that is a very indescriptive term for a very broad range of information because these children can either have an ability or a disability. Either way, a child that is considered exceptional in the sense that I am using it is one that is different from your average student that does well in a general classroom and really does not require too much help. Just to give an idea of how much depth there really is, when we look at some disorders, here's a few different categories: intellectual, communication, learning, and behavioral. A lot of these overlap, which makes it even more complicated. And on top of that, each of these disorders is different for the person who has it. So I can speak about what might be seen or might be experienced from a student who has one of these disorders, but it does change quite a bit case to case. As for what universal design for learning and differentiated instruction is, these are both kind of synonymous, interchangeable. They are ideas or strategies that teachers can use that vary from just standing in front of the class and lecturing to your audience in general. This would be modifying assignments daily or teaching methods daily and trying to specifically cater to or help a child in any way possible so that he or she excels. It is just altering learning for your students so that they will see the best results as possible. So the first category we will look at here is impoverished students, and for each of these slides, we will dive into the social, cognitive, intellectual, and academic characteristics of that slide. So socially, a poor student in the younger elementary age, socially, it might you might not notice a difference. These students are kind of too young to understand too much about wealth and income classes, and often a poor student will be seen playing with a well off student. Older, though, in high school or junior high, these impoverished students might be teased, and they will definitely be able to be picked out from those who are wealthy. And so they might tend to hang out with other students that are also in poverty. Cognitive and intellectual, I group these two together because students that are in poverty experience great stress, and this affects um, a lot of what they do. You might see that these students not paying very much attention or getting behind, and as a result, academically, they will have lower test results. And this is often because there are less resources. Maybe they are poor, and so their parents are working multiple jobs, so the teacher is really the only person that they have to instruct them. And so, some ways to counteract this with differentiated instruction or universal design for learning would be to encourage meditation for the whole class, or maybe I could just teach that specific student, hey, when you're feeling some type of way, this is how you should do, this is how you should handle it. And then also physical exercise, getting up, moving around, getting the mind thinking about something else. Autistic students socially may not know how to appropriately play with their peers. So, an autistic student really doesn't have quite a grasp on the social expectations for behaviors. So, they might stand too close to somebody, they might be really loud. Cognitively, they will be behind, most likely in social, intellectual, and/or academic characteristics. And then Asperger's is just a branch of autism where these students will excel in their school and in their cognitive and intellectual capabilities, but socially is where they will be lacking. Um, And then intellectually, as I've said, they will have a harder time processing new information and figuring out how to make use of this information. And academically, they will need tiered learning. Um, and so this looks like one on one conversation. The teacher can speak to the student, figure out what's going on. How are you feeling today? Most likely, though, the teacher should have a para for an autistic student, and even more likely, the student will be in a special education classroom for most of the day. So, students with hearing loss socially may struggle to join conversations just because their peers don't understand how they need to speak around someone with hearing loss. So their peers might speak too fast, they might speak over one another, they might speak too softly. And for this reason, student with hearing loss might be a loner a lot of the times. Cognitively, because of the hearing loss, they will probably be slow to understand what is being said to them. It might take them a second for things to click, or it might not click at all. Um, Intellectually, though, these students are capable. This, in most cases, it's just a hearing loss and not a like severe brain injury. So these students can keep up in class if there are accommodations made, and I will skip to that here in just a second. Academically, though, because they can only hear 50% or less than what is being said, their grades will suffer. But as a teacher, I can modify my classroom. I can get a microphone system. I can move a child to the front of the class. I can make sure my lights are on when I'm doing a PowerPoint presentation so that the student can see that my lips are moving and even read my lips. Gifted students socially will find that they are too mature for many of their classmates. They might see people as childish, and this can be a bit of a struggle. These students might be loners as well, maybe even a bit of a know it all in some cases. Cognitively, though, um, these students will get the hang of concepts very quickly. That's what makes them gifted. Intellectually, though, they can apply these concepts into the real world and into the assignments that they are doing and fare well on them. And academically, these students will excel, and that is why they will need an IEP and modified testing or more freedom on this testing. So instead of maybe giving a gifted child a multiple choice test where they will not be challenged whatsoever, I as the teacher can ask the student, would you prefer to do a project instead, or how would you, I can let you take this test as well, but do you want to show me another way, or do you want to skip ahead, stuff like that. So children that are English as a second language, socially they might be babied by peers because their peers might think like, oh, they're behind, they need my help, things like that. As a teacher, I should try to break this up as much as possible because it can be demeaning. And these children might only hang out, or for the most part, hang out with other English language learners. Cognitively, they might seem behind, and probably because they are still trying to process and learn new things. Intellectually, though, these students are as adequate as anybody else. It's just learning a new language takes time. And so academically, they will be behind. And so a lot of these students will go to an instructional support classroom, and maybe their testing can be altered. They can have an interpreter with them to read the test aloud in their native language. Students with ADHD can look one of two ways. Um, and I have that listed here under cognitive. But students with ADHD will socially most likely be pretty energetic. Cognitively, they will be distracted, getting off task very easily, and forgetful. They might ask questions a lot or seem like they weren't paying attention. Intellectually, though, these students are capable. Academically, though, they will have a short attention span. And so they might need stress balls or personal, I might assign a student a personal task. Hey, every time that I have an assignment, you're going to pass it out for